Welcome to the fastest daf in town, to New Masechtas Baba Kama Daf Beis. We're starting with the new Masechta, new Parak, obviously the new Mishnah. Arba Avos Nazikin. So the Mishnah and Seder Nazikin begins by introducing to us that there's four main categories of damages. Says Rashi, Avos Karil Hanach Teksibin Bekra Behedja. So, what is considered an Av? It's something in which is actually found in Psukim, and we're going to see in the Gemara, there's going to be Toldos. There's going to be subcategories. So, what are these four? Hashor v'habor v'hamav v'hever. The dinim of an ox, and the dinim of damages with a pit, and v'hamav v'hever. V'hever is going to be fire. What is v'maveh? So the Gemara is going to explain what that one is. It's not so posh. Lo hari hashor kari hamaveh. So again, however we understand what hamaveh is, doesn't have the same characteristics as an ox. Lo hari hamaveh kari hashor. And the characteristics of hamaveh is not like a shore. Both of them are not comparable to all the other ones, sheish behen ruach chayim, because shor and maveh, which is possibly also referring to one of the damages that an ox can do, they both are ruach chayim. They're both, or it could be adam, a person, they're ruach chayim. They're things which are alive. We cannot compare kahare eish in ruach chayim. The damage of fire, which is v'hever, in which, as the pasuk Rashi says, "Ki setzi eish," it does not have ruach chayim. It's not a living source. These three, they have the ability to physically move forward and do damage. It's not kahar yabor she'en darko leilach lahazik. A boar is stationary, so therefore they're not like a boar. So bahasada shemhen, but the common denominator of all these four things, shedark and lahazik, they have the ability to do damage. Ushmiras and alacha, you have to guard it. That when there is damage, the mazik, the one who does damage, is obligated to pay the nezek, the one you did damage to, b'meitav arts, from the best of your lands, which is generally, when we're talking about lands, we're referring to the idios, the top, highest quality. Now Rashi says over here, but O time achrina, the rebusa shmina, and our mission is coming to add, shiafal gav sheish l'shnei meruachayim, even though both of meruachayim will not be chad mechavre. You can't learn out one from the other. Gemara farish my lo hari dekaimer. The Mishnah isn't really so clear what it's referring to, so the Gemara is going to elaborate, so we'll be able to understand this. We'll understand this Gemara better. Okay. So that's the very first Mishnah in this Masechta. So now we're going to understand the Gemara. The Gemara says, Meditani avos mechadei katoldos. These are the four, and they're called avos. So if you have a father, you can't be a father unless you have a child. So if we're saying these are avos, there must be toldos. So toldos same kiyotz mehen oilav kiyotz mehen. When it comes to the toldos, do they have the same dinim as the av, or they're not necessarily the same? So, first of all, Gabi Shabbos, we also know when it comes to Shabbos, there's avos and toldos malachos. To not avos malachos or rem chasarachas. There's 39 malachos, which are considered to be avos. Mechlal the ikatoldos. When it comes to Shabbos, there's avos and there's also toldos. There's 39 avos malachos, but there's subshoots. And when it comes to Shabbos, toldo is saying kiyotz behen. The toldos, the malach, which is a tolda of the av, has the same din as the av. Loshna av chatos, loshna tolda chatos. If a person would be machal Shabbos b'shoigeg, you have to bring a korban chatos. Loshna av skil, loshna tolda skil. If a person would violate either an av or a tolda b'mezid, so the din is the same, you get skil. So ma'ika bein av tolda. So then, what is the difference if it's an av or a tolda? So nafkamina ilu avid shtei avos v'hadi adadi. if you did two avos together, you did two toldos, you're going to be chayav each one. However, the ilu avad av tolda diday, if you did an av and it's tolda, so in that situation, you're only going to be chayav one. You're only going to be chayav on the av malacha, but not on its tolda. So that's the nafkamina between av and a tolda. We're Inyan Shabbos, but tolda sen kiyotz ben. So it says the Gemara, Rabbi Eliezer, the Mechayev tolda b'makam av, my Karli Av, my Karli Tolda. According to the sheet of Rabbi Eliezer, there is no nafkamina. Either way, the din is that you're going to be chayiv, even if you do an Av and it's Tolda, you're going to be chayiv twice. So hachta habi mishin chashiva Karli Av, hachta habi mishin chashiva Karli Tolda. It's all toloi based on the smicha saparshius of the building of the Mishkan in connection to Chilul Shabbos. So we say that anything that was actually in the construction of the Mishkan, or possibly in the avodah of the Mishkan, different pshat, two different ways of looking at it, that is an av. But anything else, even though it's similar to it, but it wasn't actually done as a malacha in the Mishkan, so that's not called av, it's a tolda. But really, there's no nafkamin halacha. But again, we're trying to understand when it comes to the Nezikin, what's the din? Do we say told the same kiyatzben or not? So when it comes to Shabbos, told the same kiyatzben. Gabi tumas tanan avos hatumas asheretz v'ashich v'zera. When it comes to an avatuma, we know that when it comes to an avatuma, it's different than its tolda, a rishon, because an av is, for example, a sheretz or shichva zera. So we continue to beis and beis. Utame mace, or let's say a person who becomes tame mace, which by you says Rashi, Misha nagam mace havi avatoma. If you a mace is aviyavosatoma. You touch that mace, you become an avatoma. So in that situation, tame mace don't understand lav kiyotz behen. We know that an av is not the same thing as a rishon. Why? The ilu matami ad bekalim. This is Tumah 101. That if you're an avatoma, let's say you touch the mace, so you're an avatoma. So if you touch other bekalim, so you'll make them into a rishon. The ilu toldos, so that's considered to be a rishon or a tolda. The ilu toldos oichel mashkim matami ad bekalim lo matama. When it comes to this kli, which is a rishon latuma, if it touches another kli, ein kli matama kli. A rishon cannot make a kli a rishon. It can't make it into a sheni. The only thing it can make are oichel mashkin, food and drink, into a sheni. So what do we see clearly? That the ilu told us oichel mashkin matami adam kelim uloy matama. So hachamai. So do we compare Nezikin to Shabbos that told us saying kiyotz behen, or do we say that it's like the din of Tumah that told us saying is a lav kiyotz behen? So that's the Gemara's kasha. Somra Papa, not so simple. Yesh mehen kiyotz behen, yesh mehen lav kiyotz behen. Some ways a tolda is like it's av, and certain ways a tolda is not like an av regarding the zikin. Tanuma. Obviously, we have to see when do we say they are alike when they're not. So Tanuma. Gimel avois never b'shor. There's three ways that an ox can do damage. One is hakaren with its horn, vashen with its tooth, varegel, and also with its feet kicking. And these are considered to be avos within a shore. So karen benolin, how do we know that there's this din by a horn? The Tanobanan, the pasuk says ki yigach, when you gore, when the animal gores. Enigich el bekarin, goring is with a horn. Shinamar, as it says in Malachim, Niyaso Sidkia ben Kenanya Karni Barzel. He took these iron horns. The Yomi, he said, Komar Hashem be'ela tinagach es Aram begoimer. With this, I'm going to gore Aram. But the point is, we see a connection between Karnayim, horns, a Karen, and Nigicha, in goring. So therefore, when we hear horns, it does damage by goring. V'omer, and we have another pasuk, and here it's in Sefer Devarim, B'chor Shodoi Hadoloi. It says regarding the firstborn ox, which is glorified and glorious, the Karni Reim Karnov, and its glorious horns, or its horns. Behem Amim Nagach, it will gore. So again, we see another pasuk which mentions horns and mentions Negicha. So my Yomer, why do you have to have a second pasuk? So just say the second pasuk, not the first. It's good kasha. But we see maybe you can't learn out the din of kiyigach and negicha el b'keren from Divrei Nevi'im, from Sefer Malachim. So maybe that's what I need from Sefer Devarim. Okay. So Bahai Tashma b'char shor hadol. Okay. Bahai melefu. Is this actually something you can learn out from? Gili milsa b'almahu. It's just the definition of the word. The negicha b'kerenhu, that goring is with a horn. Elamau the tema kipal grachmana bein talmud. Maybe the only time the Torah makes a distinction between a wild animal and a tame animal, hanimil b'telusha. That's only if the horn is detached from the animal, which is just like these by Sidkib and Kanana. Avol b'mechuberes. If it's attached, emakumo edesi. Maybe even the first time it gores, the din is that it's a mu'id. Because we know, typically when it comes to a Karen, the din is that you are only chayav chatzi nezek, half damages, when it comes to the first few times it damages, because it's called a tam. However, if it gores afterwards, let's say the 8th time, right, even less than that, but you have to pay nezek shalim. But maybe the nafkamin is dafka if it's tolush, if it's detached. Says Rashi, Hanimil be karen telusha do medikarni sidki ben kananya. Ukigayin she'achasa habehema hakaren ben shineha. The animal puts the horns between its teeth, v'nagcha, and gores. The hasam vade lo mishalim tam kuli nezek. You shouldn't have to pay full damages mishum den darka b'kach, because this is not normal for an animal to gore by taking a horn and sticking between his teeth and damaging in that way. And therefore, we shouldn't anticipate that the owner should have expected that this could happen. Therefore, he shouldn't be held as responsible. But maybe when it comes to if it's attached, so you're going to be chayav nezek shalom immediately, maybe that ema kul moedasi tashama b'char shor hadol v'goymer. So the pasuk says Rashi, Tashma alma nuchaberes nami kari negicha. Even when it's attached, it's called a goring. Uvastam negicha polig rachmana ben karen tamul karen muedas. And we make a distinction between a wild animal and a non-animal wild animal as far as paying full or half damages, specifically by the horn. So we just established the whole notion of there is a concept of damages with a horn, and that's an av. The Gemara continues, told the Karen Mahi. What are examples? So that an av is the actual negicha. So what is a told of it? Negifa, pushing. Nishicha, biting, which we're going to see is not the same thing as shane. Ravitza, if you lays down on the kli. Ubi'it, or kicks it, which again is not the same thing as regel. We'll see why. So where it says, Maishna negicha de kari le'av, why do we call negicha an av? Dechsev ki yigach, negifa nami ksev ki yigoif. So why isn't negifa also an av? For the same reason negicha is an av. So where it says, Hai negifa negicha hi. Even though it says the word ki yigof, that's actually referring to goring. The sanya, pasek menegifa, masayim negicha, Warmoch to tell you Zuhi Negifa, Zuhi Negicha. It's telling you that really it's the same thing. So even though it says Negifa, it's really referring to Negicha. So therefore, Negifa in itself, the animal that's pushing, that animal, that is not considered to be an Av, but rather a tolda of Karen. So Gemara says like this. Maishna Gabi Adam Dichsiv Kiyigach. What's the difference? When it comes to a person, it says kiyigach umayshna gabi behem said kiyigoif. How come when it comes to an animal it says kiyigoif? So adam de islay mazla ksiv kiyigach. A person has mazel, says Rashi, sheish l'das lishmas gufo. You have more of an ability to be able to protect yourself, so therefore it uses the language of yigach, says Rashi, devadai nischaven hashor l'hara. This animal, obviously, if it gored, wanted to do bad. Uvala b'koyach, and it came at you with such strength, you couldn't do anything about it. However, back in the Gemara, behema delays law mazlaw ksiv ki yigoif. However, an animal doesn't have the same mazel, the ability to protect itself as a person, so therefore it uses that different language. Umilsag of urcha kamashmon. What's the thing it's come to tell you? The mudl adam havi mudl behema. If we say it's a mud for an adam, it's definitely a mud if it does damage to a behema. A mudl behema will havi mudl adam. Just because it was mud for a behema does not mean it's mudl adam, because it takes more for an animal to be able to damage a person than for it to damage another animal. Says Rashi, Deshor hamuid lahargas behema gimel pamim. If you have a wild animal that kills animals 3 times, l'choshev ha'adol legabe adam. That's not considered to be like the same as killing a person. Dim nagach adam umeis. It gores a person. Dinu kitam. Din Mishalem as a kaifer. So when it comes to the din of paying kaifer or chatzi kaifer by a tam, even if it's been established that this animal has damaged animals, that's not enough for it to be the status of having injured a person. And therefore, if it kills a person, there's no din kaifer. It's not considered like you have to pay the full kaifer. Okay, again, there's a din of maybe chatzi kaifer. Fine. And then Rashi furthermore says, Mishkachas law kishul amad bedin ad shenagach sholosh pa'amim. It's assuming that the court case hasn't been completed. It gored 3 times. Shul niskol miyad kishehemas arishain. And it didn't get killed right away from the first time. Okay. That's just a practical possibility. Question 9. Madua shina kosav loimer b'shor shenagach adam kigach u'b'shor shenagach shor ki yigof u'makamash mozeladina. What's the difference between a person and an animal? So says number 9. Adam di'islei mazla. A person has mazel to protect himself. It says ki yigach behema. Fine. However, behema, which does not have mazel, it says ki yigov. It comes to tell you, mudal adam havi mudal behema, mudal behema will havi mudal adam. Okay. Weiter. Now we have to understand all these cases. We said all these cases, negifa, neshicha, revitza, be'ita, are a tolda of Karen. It's hard to understand that. Neshicha, biting, should be a tolda of shenhi. That should be a tolda of the tooth, which is question 10. Madua neshicha ubiyuta told the Karen, then neshicha told the Shane, ubiyuta told the regel. So he says like this: Lo, Shane yesh hana be'lazeka. The whole notion of the av of Shane, of the tooth, means it's eating and it's enjoying the food. Ha ein hana hazeka. A bite is not biting for hana; it's just biting, which is somewhat just causing damage. Like it could cause damage with its horn, it can cause damage by biting, as opposed to the din of Shane, which is not biting just for damage, but for enjoyment, for consumption, for eating food. So anything which falls under Karen has to be something which causes damage. Its intention is lahazik. Over here, it's the intention is for hana. Ravitza ubita told the regelhi. How about crouching down or kicking? Doesn't that have to do with the foot? So why is that, Karen? Lo, regel hazeka matsui. When it comes to the regel, that's a hezek which is matsui, something in which is common. Because an animal walks with its feet. Hani ein hazikan matsui. Kicking is not a normal routine. So a regel has to do while it's like walking in its normal manner and it tramples on something and damages it. That's regel. However, when it comes to kicking or lying down, that's not in the normal action of an animal, and therefore it falls in the category like it wanted to do damage. So Elo Todo saying Alav Kiyais Mehen. When he said sometimes the toldos are like the avos and sometimes they're not. So the question is, when do we find that the tolda damages is not like the av? So Ilema Ahani, are we talking about Karen and its, which is the av, and all of its toldos are different? Can't be. Maishna Karen the kavanasal hazik, his intention is to damage. It's your property. You have to guard it. So Haninami kavanasal hazik moincha El told the Karen Karen. All the subcategories of Karen is the same din as Karen. When did he say that the told is not like the av? Is a shein v'regel. Maybe he's talking about the tooth and the foot. Shein v'regel heicha ksivi. So first of all, again, where do we find that they're found in the psukim? The sign, the pasuk says v'shilach. When the pasuk says v'shilach, Rashi says v'shilach as be'iroi, that he sent out his animal zeh haregel. It means it's going with its feet. V'cheinu omer, so too it says mishalchi regel hashor b'chamor. Uvier, when it says uvier zu hashein, that's damaging with the tooth. V'cheinu omer ka'asher yivayer, as it consumes. As we continue to Gimel of an olive, hagolol ad tumoi, with its tooth until it finishes it off. Why is golol? Says Rashi Hainu Shein. Golal means tooth. Why? Because shapamim megula, pamim mechusa. Teeth, sometimes they're hidden, sometimes they're revealed, right? So therefore, that's the reason why it has that language. Lishnachrina, Rashi says, golal zer oisha hashein, the dung of the teeth, me'averis l'meichel v'nasis golal. That basically is part of the digestive system, that the digestive system begins with the teeth, but then it eventually creates waste. Omer mar v'shilach zu haregel, when it says v'shilach, that's referring to the foot. V'cheinu omer mishalchi regel hashar v'chamor. Time because of rachamon mishalchi regel hashar v'chamor. That's the reason why we're establishing that's what the word means. Halav hachi. If not, b'may mukmasla. How else could you establish this pasuk? Iker and ksiv. If it's talking about the horn, we already established it. Ishain ksiv. If it's a shein, we also mentioned it. So it's shein. If we didn't have that, we would maybe not think it's on a regel. Maybe that it's talking about shein. But shein, we already learned out the tooth. So maybe it's talking about two different dinim by a tooth. Bahad mikali karna. Bahad mikali karna. Kamashmon. One is when it completely consumes the item, and when is when it doesn't completely consume the item. V'hashduk mina regel. So now that in fact we established that this pasuk is going the regel, so then shein delo mikali karna manolan. How do we know there's a chi of hezek if the tooth of the animal does not completely damage the item? So dumi the regel. Ma regel loshna mikali karna v'loshna lo mikali karna. Av shein loshna mikali karna v'loshna lo mikali karna. So it's not going to make any difference either way. Even if it's not completely destroyed, the din will be the same. Obviously, we're in the middle of a sugi over here. We're going to stop here because it just keeps going till the next blot. Okay, let's see if we have any questions over here. Fine. So again, we did question 10. Nishicha, biting and kicking, are told us of Karen. It's not told of shein or regel, as we said before. TA 20. Tanoban kiga cheni gichel bekaren shnemer biyas loy sidkia ben kananya karen bars of yomer habachor shalo mavi oimer. So why does that have to say that? So in the Havamina, it's because maybe Divri Kabal, Divri Tav, Divri Kabal, Yalfinan, or Hadimili Talusha of Mechaberes, Kul Moedasi, Kamash Moan. You would think maybe there's a chilik between Talush and Mechuber. TA 20, as we saw over here in Rashi. Again, Mauda Tema, Ki Polig Rachmana, Ben Tamu Muadami, but Talusha, maybe it's only Talush. Fine. Question TB 21. Madun the Shicha Beita told the Karen, Vein the Shicha told the Shane, Beyuta told the Regel. Same questions we had before, and we see what I wrote. Karen yesh kavanas lahazik, kamo neshicha ubiita v'lo dam l'shein sheish hana b'achila v'dam l'regel sheshchiach hahezek. Akan.